all, my name is Menika and today we will be talking about the most common requests that I see come through for my company Work with Menika, where we design South Asian bridal events across the globe. So the most common request that comes to my company is a day event. And today we will be talking about wedding coordination and planning for 1 day event. In my future videos, I'll also talk about 3 day events, 5 day events, a week-long events, and so on. But today's is going to be focused on 1 day. The bride and the bridegroom want to have a ceremony in the morning, a ceremony in the evening, and maybe have something else in between those two. So what would that look like from a planning perspective for us wedding planners? And what would that look like in terms of you as a client that are reaching out to a wedding planner? The thing you have to understand is that for a wedding planner and even for yourselves, even for a 1 day event, it's really not a 1 day event. You are actually talking about 5 days. And I know that sounds tough, but I want you to know that because that just means that if you're planning to work till the very last day, come for your ceremony, have a blast, have a good time, and then go back and start working the very next day, which is the reality of many of us in the US. I have worked in IT industry, I've done project management, I've done so many other things, and I have done that where the very day that I delivered my son, 2 days later, I was actually sitting on my computer and I started work. So that's the reality. But if that is your reality, it is important to understand the time commitment that goes with it. So let's say you come in and you say, Minka, this is a 1 day event and we want to get married in the morning, maybe have this fire ceremony, the mandap in the morning and have an evening cocktail reception. Okay, great. But to me, I would explain to you, it's really not a day event. Let's talk about the day before the guests arrive. Now we're talking about destination weddings, and it may not be the destination for the bride and groom. They may still be there, but their relatives flying in from different places, and from that point of view the coordination is no different than what it would be for the destination wedding. The day before the guests arrive, let's call it day zero, right? Let's call it day zero. Day zero is where your event coordinator, bridal planner would come in. We would do setups, making sure that the accommodations are in order, that the food orders are looking good, transportation is arranged. We would go tour the venue to make sure that everything is looking fine. There are things that we could possibly plan to put in the venue early on so that we are not really scrambling at the last minute. We would check with the entertainment people, make sure all the plug points are working, all the connections are working. We would also re-look at the timeline and make sure that the timeline still matches with what we are looking for. I mean, there are external factors, right? Like the flight cancellations. I hope not. The flight reschedules. They could be weather conditions. They could be political conditions. There's so many things. So making sure that the timeline still stands. Small things like, making tags for the guests that are coming in so that everybody has a name or the event name so we can somehow recognize if it's in a place where other events are happening as well. So that's your day zero. Okay, let's say day one is where the guests start arriving, and if day one may be where you decide to do the actual ceremony, and if that's the case, if that's really where you need to take, there's no way you can do a morning and an evening ceremony. It has to be the evening ceremony in that case if your guests are arriving the same day. So day one, your guests come in. Now at that point, your event coordinator is ready like 4 a.m. or sometimes even earlier than 4 a.m. It's a 24-hour job at that point. We'll be arranging for the airport pickups if that's something your guests need. Sometimes it would be making sure that somebody needs some directions on their phones and so on. Now you're talking about, let's say, minimum a party of anywhere from 50 to 100. You can see the amount of coordination that's required on that day. This is from a planner perspective. Now look at it from the angle of you being the bride or groom here based in the US. Even your own parents are coming in and you're like, okay, my parents don't know how to give directions. I am the one point in charge. So in that case, talk to your coordinator. Tell them I will be busy that day. I have meeting from 3 to 5 that I cannot miss. And so that ways your event coordinator plans for you being unavailable during that time, and make sure any information they need, they get it ahead of time. Okay, so from your point of view, your relatives might still be calling you, texting you, hey, where do we come in? They may not know who your coordinator is. So if that's the case, let them know ahead of time that I do have a coordinator. I may not always be available during that time. Please reach out to my coordinator and that, he or she can help. So now that your guests have arrived, at that point, your wedding coordinator most likely set up a dinner. I would say don't go overboard with that particular dinner. People are coming in. Travel doesn't quite go well with most people's stomach. So go for something more buffet style so that people can pick and choose what they want. And also because it's buffet style and it's not something that's plated, usually you can give them a longer window where they can chit chat, get what they want. But at that point, the expectation probably is that you would come in and you would meet the guests and greet, and at that point you can decide to have maybe like a immersive event, an antakshri, or maybe just call some performers from outside and take some pre-wedding pictures and so on and so forth. So that's what your day one would look like: settling in your guests, getting some good pre-wedding pictures, distributing timelines. Now day one is done, day two comes in, which is your actual day where you're getting married, right? Like that's your event day. Let's say your ceremony starts very early in the morning. I've had to do ceremonies that were based on like certain time that the panditji gave, and the time may be like 4 a.m. in the morning. I would say you need to be strategic about it. Your guests that arrive late in the night at 12 in the night and aren't like your immediate, like your bua or your mama, but are more of distant family, you can decide if you want them to sit this one out because it's so early in the morning, or if you would rather have them. But set those expectations with your guests, ahead of time, and that's something your event coordinator can help you with. So you don't have to have these difficult conversations. We'll make sure that everybody gets a morning wake up call, morning tea in their room, elaichi tea, adrak tea. I mean, that's where I think having somebody that understands culturally, that certain relative of yours is the purest vegetarian you can find versus certain relative of yours that only gets up in the morning with some brandy and some hotcakes, that really helps. So your event coordinator will have somebody in the location where the event is happening, and then also making sure somebody is there where your guests are, and making sure that the guests go from point A to point B where the venue is where this event is happening. So a lot goes into it. That's why we have a team. Even for a one day event, you may have anywhere from 5 to 10 people that are actively working to make sure everything from videography to photography to your guests to entertainment to food to light, tent setup, I mean, I can think of so many more things, but everything's happening. So, okay, first event goes through great. Then there's a turn down service if you're having another event in the evening. So, as a bride and groom, you decide if you would want to stay in the venue, in which case, talk to your event coordinator and make sure there's a room for you to be able to rest, unwind. If you really would like to mingle with your guests at that point, then maybe an area where some of your guests can come in and you guys can hang out together, play some music, or just talk. I would not recommend planning anything in between the morning and the evening events because there just isn't enough time. I definitely would try to talk you out, like doing some activity in between, just because any activity, if there is a delay, delays everything else and it's not worth it. But when I say I recommend, that's exactly what I do. In my event coordination and planning theory, client is the king. And so, if you want to pull this off and you are adamant you can pull this off, I will work very hard to make that happen. But also, I will tell you the risks and the benefits and let you be the judge of that. In between, there's at least going to be a meal. and then your evening event follows. And so between your morning and evening, ensuring that the venue is set up, ensuring all those behind the scene pictures are being taken, behind the scene moments are being captured, and then your evening event follows. And once your evening event is done, most events usually last a little bit later in the night, making sure that the guest count is. So for me, I make sure that once everybody's in their room, just making sure that either I touch base with the front desk or I have some system where I can make sure all your guests have made it to their room safely. It could be as simple as calling their rooms and saying, hey, I wanted to ask you if you would like an extra pillow, and they say, no, but at least I know that your guest made it to the room, right? Just making sure that those other non-tangible things are taken care of as well. So that's your day 2. Now, day 3, the guests start leaving, let's say in the afternoon, and you can set expectations with your guests that there will be meal service available up until the afternoon, and then after that the guests start leaving. And if you are planning to make arrangements for your guests to go to the airport, just making sure that we can club in the timings and be more efficient about how we do that. If there are any delays, then I usually have a conversation with the hotel managers and the resort managers where I can still block 1 or 2 rooms for one more day, so that your guests at least have a place where they can park their suitcases, maybe just lie down a little bit. So those are just basic courtesies. It doesn't cost you a lot of money, but it adds on a lot more good experience for your guests. So that's your day 3. Everybody leaves. Let's say by evening everybody's done. You decide to leave the same day, or decide to leave for your honeymoon or whatever that may be. Day 3 is where you would also settle any bills. So for the coordinators themselves, the payment plans are a little bit different. I'll make another video around it, but for the most part our fees is paid off a few days before the event starts. But with that said, during the event there may be other expenses that you may have given your wedding coordinator permission to go ahead and approve, depending on the amount that those expenses are. So for those, you would settle those with your wedding coordinator. Any parting gifts, anything like that, you've already taken care of. Everybody left, but your wedding coordinator still stays there, because we have to make sure that we take care of everything, that everything is dismantled, that the light people take their stuff, the venue people tell us yes, you're good to go, and that they have everything they need. The rooms are all handed over. Videographer, the photographer have left, they've got everything they needed. So really your wedding coordinator and a small percentage of their team will stay there for day 3. And then either the day 3 night, or I would say maybe the day 4 early morning, is when your coordinator will leave the premises. So now remember, day 0 is where your wedding coordinator came in and made sure everything was good, everything was kosher. Day 1 is where your guests come in. Day 2 is where your actual ceremony happens, let's say morning and evening. Day 3 is really where they leave, and day 4 is where your event coordinator leaves. So this is what I mean when I say, from a coordinator point of view, it's a 5-day event, and in some cases, even from bride and your groom's point of view, it's at least a 4 to 5 days event. Even if you cannot be there on day 0 and day 4, you still need to be there for day 1, 2, and 3 if you are a bride or a groom. But if you are an event coordinator, or if you're a wedding planner, you need to really, even for a 1-day event, you really need to plan for 5 days of boots on the ground kind of thing. So look at that strategically, plan your time accordingly, understand if your coordinator is charging you a bit extra for those extra days, or is asking you to book rooms for the coordination part for those days. Understand that it comes from a place where they genuinely know that that's the time that's needed. So keep that in mind, and I'll make more videos on a 3-day event and a 5-day event, because a lot of times people think that just because it's a 1-day event, that it's a lot more cost effective, while it's not, because you still need to have your guests come in the day before and leave the day after. So sometimes if your event coordinator, wedding planner can crunch some numbers, and in your case, given where your guests are coming from and the flight schedules and all that, do about a 3-day planning event in the same cost or a little bit extra, versus trying to cramp everything into one. Sometimes the venue cost can be so much. it may make sense to do some events where your accommodations are, and then just do that one main event in the venue that you've put in for that particular thing. So it really depends. So that is why a coordinator might be able to help you a little bit better. But I've always believed that even as a bride or a groom, if you are somebody who wants to plan your wedding, I would say you are still in the right place. You will get lots of tips and tricks. Watch my next video as well. I release one video every Thursday. I am also a wedding planner and coordinator based in the US, but we do plan weddings across the globe. So give me a call if I can help you with your wedding planning. And I hope to see you soon.